Hello and welcome to Love from the Other Side. If it's your first time here, we are so glad that you're here. We bring you stories from around the world of people who share their near-death experiences. It is our hope that these videos bring you peace and comfort. If you haven't done so yet, I would love to invite you to be our newest subscriber to the channel. And if you hit the bell icon, that will let you know when we upload new videos, which we do a few times a week. With that being said, let's get started with today's video. Today we bring you two experiences, and I am going to start with the shorter experience from Zena. Okay, I have to go at this backwards since I didn't know anything about it until I was 16. I was 16 and my dad and I were on a long drive together, just the two of us, and we were talking about all kinds of things. I told him about a really strange dream I'd had years and years ago, and I couldn't understand how it had remained so vivid all of these years. I said I had walked down a dim hallway, and at the end was a door, just a tiny bit open. There was a lovely bright sunlight coming from the bit of the open doorway. When I pushed it open, there was a green lawn or field in front of me. I saw a stream with a little bridge over it. On the other side of the bridge were all these people who obviously knew me, as they called me by my family nickname and greeted me warmly. I did not know any of these people. However, even at 16, all these years later, I could describe them with such detail and accuracy that my father recognized most of them, relatives who had passed on before I was even born, whom I had never met and of whom we had no photographs. Anyway, as I started to enter the place, there was a bright, soft light. It was shaped as if you drew an oval around a person. The light came from nowhere and started to touch me. It wasn't pushing against me, yet there was no sense of being touched except by love. As I moved backwards out of the door, the light said to me, "Not yet." Then the door shut. I felt a very sharp sense of regret and loss, but I didn't know why or what for. It was as much as a child of the age of 3 can conceptualize those emotions. Anyway, when I finished telling my dad about the dream, he said to me, "That would have been when you died." He explained to me about an asthma attack. He also then told me he knew of many of the people I described. He told me I would have been dead approximately 45 minutes from an asthma attack when I was at the age of 3, and I was returned to life by the prayers of the practitioner they had called. Being a typical teenager, I just said, "Dead? Are you sure?" Even in the 60s, we didn't trust our parents to really know that much about anything. He replied to me, "I was a medic in the Army. I know dead when I see it." He warned me not to ask my mother about it. No one talked about things like that back then or until relatively recently. They would have locked you up. I really haven't talked about it, but it has remained very much a part of my experience. We never spoke of it again. While this experience shared was relatively short, Zena does answer a question and answer session that has quite a few questions, and I will put a link to that in the description of the video. Now for our next NDE of the day, we have an experience from Lynn. I did not wake up for at least a day, maybe 2 or 3 after surgery. I have a very rare disease that was misdiagnosed at the time. The pump that the surgeon was putting in, when working properly, helped people with both my actual disease and those with the disease I was misdiagnosed with. The technology was new at the time, and the surgeon had never put one in before. Another doctor later told me that she thought that the surgeon put too much medicine in the pump at the time of surgery. Overdosing me with this drug can totally paralyze a person. That's why I didn't wake up and couldn't breathe effectively. Another anesthesiologist in the hospital thought that my disease negatively interacted with the anesthesia. He developed a different recipe for the anesthesia that was specific to people with my disease. Maybe it was both, the anesthesia and the pump drug together. No matter though, because all my vital organs were compromised. The correct diagnosis is what is known as stiff person syndrome. Visitors were told that I was probably going to die. I don't remember how bad my breathing was, but a friend who was also a nurse came to visit me. She later told me that I was gasping for breath about 4 times a minute. Having witnessed death quite a bit, she thought that every breath was my last. Meanwhile, I went somewhere. I was in a thin, large, transparent tube, like a very thin membrane that I could see through. I was running through the tube at light speed, watching the stars in the universe go by. The amazing part to me at the time was that I could not walk at all, since I used a wheelchair and was completely stiffened. This experience of actually running was so freeing, so amazing, and so wonderful. Looking forward, the tube seemed endless as it was twisting away into eternal space. But I didn't care because I was so free. With every running step, it took me eons away. Then I was suddenly in a beautiful place. There was a meadow to my left, and it descended down a rolling hill with the wildflowers. There was a lush green forest in the distance beyond the meadow. There were 2 people there with me. Behind these people was a stone wall covered with ivy. That wall separated me from everything else in front of me. I could not see over it or around it. One of the people was like a gardener with a rake. It seemed to me that he was absently raking the stones or the gravel in the front wall. It reminded me of how Buddhist monks make calming designs in gravel. But I had the feeling that he was paying attention to what was happening with me and the other person. I later felt that this person, whose face I could never see, was probably my deceased father. My father and I had a rocky relationship during my childhood and teenage years, and up until the time he had died. I felt that he wanted to be there, to know that I was okay, and for me to know that I was loved so deeply, in spite of some of the things that had happened in between us. He died when I was age 21, and I never got to repair our relationship. I had always wanted to resolve my anger towards him and my deep fear of him. The other person is difficult to describe. He was made of love. Everything about him eluded love and defined what love really is. He took me into my arms and just held me there. He fed me that love, the calm and peaceful love. My life had been so painful for so long. I was trying so hard just to live for our children. I was trying to maintain some sense of purpose rather than being a very sick and costly burden. That moment when I was so gently held by this person, I felt healed of my deepest grieving and my greatest loneliness. I felt he had answered my most unasked questions, told me I was unquestionably and deeply valued and loved just as I was. It was all communicated to me without any words whatsoever. Then I woke up in the ICU. That was a beautiful experience shared by Lynn. I especially enjoyed the fact that although in the human form she was bound to a wheelchair, she once again had the experience of running. If you would like to read her experience and a brief question and answer session, I will also put a link to this in the About section of the video. Thank you for spending your time with us today, and as always, until next time, God bless.